Hello, everyone, and good whatever moment of this wonderful day you are enjoying on your time zones, whether you are watching us or listening to us now live or later on as you enjoy the recording. And wholehearted welcome to another conversation part of our May series, a series dedicated to mental health. Now, today we will be talking about burnout in HR, and our conversation is called HR therapy. My name is Minola Jacques. I will be your co host for the next hour. We have Jessa, as usual, working her magic backstage, and we have an amazing lineup of speakers. First and foremost, welcome to all of you in the audience. And I do have a small ask for help. If you could just drop a few comments in the chat and let us know maybe where you're connecting from. And this way, oh, I already see, hi, Kimberly, hi, Mustafa. I already see comments coming in. So we know that we are up and running technically. Now, if at any moment in time you experience any audio or video inconveniences, the quickest way to fix those is just drop off and then reconnect, and hopefully that will be restored. Now, Jessa, if you could just help me, please, bringing up the speakers on stage, and we will take it from there. And while they are settling in their small Zoom boxes, I will also make an invitation to everybody in our audience. Please use the chat generously and consider this conversation as much yours as it is ours on the stage. If there's one thing that we keep learning through all our conversations, is that there are so many incredible nuances across geographies, across generations, across different experiences in different workplaces. And I would ask Evelyn if you can just mute yourself for a short while. Thank you so very much. So please do drop us your own comments, your own takes on the topic. And this is the most generous and gracious way to keep this community learning from each other. Now, enough of my blabathon for today. We have a short hour and let's make the most out of it. We are here for HR therapy and for looking at ways to combating burnout in HR. Yesterday, we had a conversation about HR within the workplace in general, and we were kind of looking forward to flavor of burnout and how can we most meaningfully deal with it. So what I will do, I will, as usual, pass the e-mic around as you appear on my screen clockwise. You already know the drill. And I will ask you to firstly just shortly introduce yourselves. And also, for the purpose of our conversation today, what is your own definition, your own current understanding of burnout? Jennifer, so wonderful to see you again. Welcome.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it. My name is Jennifer Watson. I'm VP of HR at a startup tech company, and previously was at a very large retailer. And my current well, first of all, love this glasses. I think this is maybe a glasses panel, so I love it. But I think my current understanding of burnout and my own personal experience, unfortunately, has been I didn't know I was burnt out until too late. And so I think that applies to a lot of us. You get out of a situation, you're like, holy cow, I didn't even know how bad it was. And so I think having reflected on that, for me, it's a big part of what I try to do to make sure that I never get to that place again. So a lot of it is stress management. How do I make sure to set my boundaries, and how do I make sure that I am showing up as the best version of myself? Because I can't do my job if I am burnout and leading as from example for others. So excited for the conversation.
Thank you so very much. Now, Evelyn, it's been a hot minute since we were on the same screen.
No, I know. How are you?
Very happy to see you today.
You as well. You as well. Can you hear me?
Yes, everything is perfect.
So I think for me, to piggyback off everything that Jennifer said for burnout, I look at it as the full state of a person's burnout, from psychological, emotional, physical. It's just that whole gamut of full on exhaustion, and brought on by the stresses of the workplace. And I think for HR, it's compounded because we have our own internal stressors, right? But then you take on the business stressors that add to that. And I think that facilitates the burnout that we receive on a more impactful manner for HR professionals.
Thank you very much, Evelyn. And Renzi, good to see you again. Same with Evelyn. You've been avoiding my panels.
Hello, hi Minola. Hi Jennifer. Hi Evelyn. Really pleasure to be with you guys here today. So my name is Renzi. I am the managing director for Perky People. It's an HR consulting business based in New Zealand, but I'm operating here in Dubai. So I'm joining you guys from Dubai. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from. So to your question, Minola, what is burnout for me? Personally, burnout for me is when my battery is completely depleted and I'm physically and emotionally exhausted and I cannot enjoy anymore what I used to enjoy. I'm normally a people person, naturally a people person, actually. So like when I'm really burnt out, like I just don't want to see people. Sometimes it takes a long time to actually fall in love again with what you do. So that's burnout for me. So far, I've only had that one incident so far in my lifetime of experiencing that.
Well, it's only the intro round, but this conversation already feels like a hug. And I have to admit, I needed this one on this Friday more than I allowed myself to actually admit to myself. Now, I would really love to take a few moments and look at what is the HR flavor of burnout. What are the specific causes that trigger burnout within the HR profession? And if we can also have a bit of a look how much, and I know that this slice of the conversation tends to be you know infused with quite strong opinions. How much of it is the personal dimension, and how much of it is the organizational slash function specific dimension? And by now, for some strange reason, I always go diagonally. So Evelyn, I will ask you to be our pioneer for today. And then Jennifer Renzi, unmuting competition is officially open. So Evelyn.
May odds be in your favor. I would say it's a little bit of both. I think it starts with the person, but most HR professionals tend to minimize their personal, right? And so then when you add on the organizational things, it just compounds those things and compound them to they're no longer able to operate as a person anymore because they can't be hide behind the work because the work has become too much. So now their personal and their work are both overloading and creating that burnout factor, I think. Using myself as an example, most times people at work don't know what I'm dealing with personally. And last year, I literally, I was just telling my team and my org, I was like literally at my deathbed, still trying to push through. And I really had to take moments with, my medical team and just say, I cannot continue on and I need the support of others. And here's how. But it took, a lot of medical professionals to tell me, like, you can't continue operating, not me as the individual or because the business didn't know these things, them as the organization. So I think a lot of times, HR professionals take on too much, which causes, so it's hard to say it's one or the other. I think it's compounding when they both conflict at the same time.
This might sound maybe a bit controversial, but I'm gonna go the opposite way, Evelyn. I think majority of it is actually us as HR, like people, not necessarily HR, but like people in general. Especially in our field as HR, we are always emotionally invested in what we do. We always want to help people. We always want to work with leaders who, like who's always on the go and trying to fix things and everything and trying to be all for everyone. And as a result of that, like sometimes we start with a battery that is full in the beginning of the day. And then little did we know that battery gets eaten up throughout the day and even the following day and the following weeks and following month because no one is already reminding us like, hey, think you're draining your battery too fast and you can't continue doing like this because you're not a robot at the end of the day. Because the reality is we all have choices. Just like what we tell employees, take ownership of your own mental health, take ownership of your well-being because no one else will. Us as HR, the reason why I'm saying that also is that mindful work that we do in the workplace. If we as HR professionals continue to be role models and show people like, hey, this is how I'm going to be setting my boundaries. Don't call me at 6 p.m. I will attend to you unless it's emergency. I'll do that. I know it's easier said than done, but like little things like this help in a way to tell people that like, this is how you protect your own boundaries. This is how you protect yourself so that you can also put on the mask to other people. Because otherwise, if you continue working day in, day out and running, on your hamster spinning wheel, like sooner or later, your batteries are also going to be depleted and there's nothing left to be given to other people who need your help.
Yeah, I love what both of you said. And I think it kind of ties back to the reason, why we go into HR is the reason we're burnout anyway, right? Like we love helping people. We really believe in, doing right by people and the strategy behind it and, using HR as a business, right? But unlike some other business leaders, that people are our business. And part of people is the emotion, the challenges, like how do you pull those different levers to get that person to perform well? Which, yes, leaders all have that, but that is our sole purpose. And I think we spend a lot of time, the reason we burn out is kind of to your point, Renzi, is that we spend a lot of time trying to go above and beyond for people and personally going above and beyond to prove our worth. I think during COVID and during, the past couple years, there's been so much focus on people because of everything going on. And everybody looked to us like we were the experts and we knew everything. And so we felt this pressure to be on all the time. There was all this stuff going on. Everybody needed us. Everything was, there was all this unrest all over the world and in our company. And so we were under a spotlight and we felt all this pressure. And to both of your points, we have got to kind of swing back the pendulum to helping ourselves just as much as we help others. And that's hard because that's innately it's not natural because we've done it for so long the other way. But I truly believe that, to both of your point, if you do not make that a priority, set those boundaries, make sure you understand what fills you up, and really, so you don't get to the point, Evelyn, where you're like completely depleted and a medical professional is telling you something about yourself. You're like, why am I having a doctor tell me that I am burnt out? Like, I should be able to recognize that. And so I think it's both parts. I think it's the nature of what we do. I think it's why we got into it, and then breaking some of those habits to make sure we take care of ourselves.
One point that came across very, very strongly, and it was made repeatedly and very intentionally so during the conversation yesterday, was that as much as we try to look at trends and as much as we try to make sense of wider journeys, at the end of the day, burnout is a profoundly individual experience. So I would invite you, in any manner that you feel comfortable with, if you can share a story, whether your own or a story that you witnessed, and what was the recovery journey? What were the learnings? What were the unlearnings on the recovery journey? I will give you a few seconds to sit with your stories and decide on how to best share them. And in the meantime, I will just welcome everybody who joined during the last minutes. And before we will get those questions, I will anticipate them and tell everybody that, yes, this conversation is being recorded. So if you feel that you lost the beginning, don't worry, you can always go back to this very, very link after the live is wrapped up, and you can get it from there. Now, Renzi, are you okay to kick this one off?
I'm all in. I'm happy to share the story, and I've been sharing the story to other people in the hope of like maybe they will get the point that actually burnout is real. This happened some time ago in my previous corporate life, where I was really hustling. It was like years where I wasn't taking lunch break. It's literally 8 hours, 9 hours of sitting in front of my desk, like working, even to go home, work at night, work on my weekends, work also in the middle of the night, first thing in the morning. It's all about work. The world was basically the center of my universe. And then it came to a point, I think, toward the latter stage of me doing that, I get sick all the time, and I started having all these physical manifestations like rashes, and I get sick a lot. And I'm actually a very active person, so I obviously went to the doctor because I didn't know what was going on, and then I didn't realize even my high blood pressure was extremely high, and all of those things. So I got admitted into the hospital, in short, and then doctors said like, oh, they couldn't find anything. And then they started interviewing me about like, so what do you do? Tell me about your environment, what's happening, etc., etc. So the only thing they could put their finger in was actually the fact that it's stress bringing that into my life. And that was a big shock for me, because I thought like, like I'm fit, like I can do this, I can handle this. And I will never forget this, because I'm sure a lot of people here are still practicing the same thing, where their calendars are chock-a-block from 9 a.m. until 6 p.m. with no break in between. I'm that type of person back in the day. So there was one person who was working in another team told me like, hey, let me tell you something. This is not healthy. So I appreciated the fact that someone reminded me, because as HR professionals, we know what's right. We know what's good for people. But sometimes we also need to be reminded of the things that we do. Because again, like what I mentioned earlier, when we get stuck in that, like hamster spinning wheel, we're already wearing our blinkers and we cannot see what's happening anymore until, like physically you're already exhausted and you cannot function anymore. So for me, that was a big wake up call for me. So that's why I made a point that I will focus on my physical and mental health. And that's why I made a point to set clear boundaries for myself after that incident.
Thank you.
I would like to say that mine was less of a short stint that made me come to realization. Mine's more been a longer recovery, if you will. So I think, I'm not traditionally trained HR. I was a teacher, recruited by HR, homegrown. That's how I learned everything. And so I constantly felt this need to work harder, I think, than everybody else, because I was learning as I went. And I've always said I may not be the smartest person, but I'll always work harder. And so I think that was just part of who I was naturally. And so then when I went to a very large retailer during the pandemic, dealing with retail and stores and supporting stores during that time, it didn't stop. There was a lot of violence and a lot of anger. And my team was supporting those investigations and those accommodations in the stores. And so I remember, sitting up till 11 midnight working. I have 2 kids, getting up in the morning, doing it all over again. And it really was not until I left that company that I realized, holy cow, the way I had, and it was gradual. It almost just kind of felt normal, because you just gradually add a little more and add a little more. And then the emails on the weekends become normal, and then the calls, and then you can't pull it back in. And so when I left that company, I realized, holy cow, I'd gotten in deep on this. And it took me about a year to really kind of unwind all of that. I mean, even to the point where, like, checking my phone on the weekend, did I miss an email? Did I miss an email? Did I miss an email? That took 6 months for me to break. And so I don't think it was one of those burnout situations, where it was, oh my gosh, I have to stop right now. I've completely it was more unwinding than I think I even expected. And I still struggle with it. I'll be honest, because it's a battle between who I feel like I am and what the company's asking. And so it's me keeping myself in check, but I think it's recognizing that in myself to say, okay, I think I'm just trying to fill my time. Like, what should I be doing instead? I don't need to do this right now. Like, I don't need to do this on the weekend. So what can I do for myself instead? And I think that's really important. And looking back at where it was when I have 2 young children, I was going through a divorce at the time, and I needed to be pouring into that situation as opposed to, still working hard and things like that. But they're, at 5 o'clock, let me log off, spend the time with my children who need me right now. And then if something comes up, I can get on later or plan my day for the next day. So I think it took me that time to really say, like, how do I figure out what I need first, while I'm figuring out what this burnout means for my life. So mine was a little bit of a longer journey / still going on.
Totally with you with that, Jennifer. So much so that I think I had experienced 2 burnout situations. The first one, I physically went blind for 2 weeks. And so for me, and leading up to that, it's like I should have known something was going to happen, but literally sitting in a training with manager with sunglasses because my eyes were so red and it wasn't pink eye. And so I didn't want to scare the manager. So I'm like, sorry guys, I have glasses on because the lights are too bright, but still performing on, doing the trainings, doing all these, and literally waking up to not being able to see. And for me, that, like, took me down a path of, this is just not normal. And it was, having to sit still for literally 2 weeks because I couldn't do much of anything. And really, it made me realize I literally had no life outside of work. I had no hobbies. I had no nothing. So I'm sitting there like twiddling my thumbs, and then that 2 weeks. And then once I was able to get my eyesight back, going through another 4 weeks of, just transitioning back into not even work, just getting health wise, realizing that I need to find things outside of work that can keep me engaged and just in this overall scheme of life, right? And so that work does not become my end all be all. And also figuring out those triggers and things of that nature before it gets to the point of, no return. Because like my eye doctor specialist said, if this would have continued on, I could have been permanently blind. So thankfully that, I did not, get to that point. And I think much of what Jennifer said, it's still a recovering thing, so much so that it led to a second burnout where, again, thinking I've overcome some habits, but falling back into some of those things when you just have to keep going and keep going. And more recently, being a Black woman in leadership, having to constantly prove why I'm here, why I'm doing this. And just women in general have to sometimes feel like they have to do that. But as a Black woman in an organization, and being one of the few few Black leaders, it felt like I did not have the opportunity to turn off. And so going through, a few integration projects and things of that nature, and being one of the only skilled people to do certain things, feeling like I had to be on, which led to, another physical manifestation. Again, being hospitalized, to the point where letting my team know that I cannot continue down this path. And much to what Rincy mentioned earlier, putting in strong boundaries of, turn off, like my phone goes on do not disturb after 5 o'clock. And it's, unless it's a true emergency, it's not getting answered, picked up or not, because at this point it's really not an emergency that I can take on anyway. So you might, if it's truly emergency, you might need to call someone else anyway. And then understanding, same thing in the morning, like it doesn't turn on until, a certain point in the morning. And throughout the day, thinking about Rincy in the calendar, I'm a strong proponent of, I put focus time on there where it's just my time to decompress and think things through. And sometimes it's right after meetings or right after things, because sometimes we're in these meetings back to back that we have no moment to decompress, to understand what really is needed from this. What do I need to take away? And it took some time for, the organization and leaders to understand it. Like I remember hearing comments, your calendar is always so full. Your calendar is like, yes, I'm actually busy. I'm actually doing certain things, but if there's times that you would like, to schedule, let's find some time that works for the both of us, not, just, and getting them to realign and reshift their thinking to the point now they're like, I like this. Like, so now they're starting to implement some of these things, but it took a learning curve, right? And setting those boundaries and recognizing that this was not healthy, much to what Rincy was saying. And, actually creating a movement within that process, right? So it helped not only just myself, but others. And I think I'm on that continued path, much what Jennifer said, of continuing to stay on the task of that.
Thank you.
And
Jennifer.
I really, it's so interesting, Evelyn, you said this, because I feel like the things that have gotten us to this point in our career are the same things that burn us out. Like, it is wild. I think about this all the time because, as HR, it's like, oh, you do all the fluff stuff. And it's like, no, we are business people. But what gets recognized sometimes is all the tasks. Gosh, you get so much done in a day. Oh my gosh, you really plowed through that project. You turn this around so quick. So we get reinforced. And of course, validation feels great. Like, heck yeah, I like it. And so you're telling me these are all the things. I've gotten promoted for those things. I've gotten recognition and gotten where I am. And that in turn leads me to burnout. So it's this constant, I love how it's crazy to me, especially I feel that as a female completely.
Wholeheartedly agree. Oh, sorry. I was going to say, I wholeheartedly agree. And one of the things I did was implement systems now that help with a lot of those task things, right? And utilizing, where a lot of people are scared of AI, I've actually been embracing and loving it in a lot of spaces where it's taken so many things that would have taken me to burnout points to automate and do down that now, and I can focus on the things I genuinely and truly love to do, and those more interactions that bring me more joy in the work that I do.
Thank you, Rincy.
I just wanted to add, because I like what you said there earlier, Jennifer, about like, because you are like committed, you're high performing and whatnot. Most of the time, the high performing individuals or people are the ones who are the most susceptible to burnout, because they're always pressurizing themselves to deliver more. And if you're working with a manager who see like, oh, wow, that's amazing. You can turn things around in 1 day, in 2 days, where like someone can do that in 1 month. Let me give you some more projects. And because we are motivated by, oh yeah, the manager trusts me. I want to do more. I want to prove more. But little did you know, like, burnout starts creeping in. So when you don't realize you're getting sick more, you're getting more mistakes, you're complaining a lot more, maybe not at work, maybe with your husband, maybe with your wife, maybe with your friends. These things are already signs and symptoms of burnout. And then it's too late for you, because you're going to be hitting the brick wall really, really quickly, and you realize, oh, wow. And then what Jennifer and Evelyn said, like, maybe it can be severe, that it would take you a year or so to actually come out of it.
Yeah. Well, just as a extra special thank you for sharing your stories. I hope you will give me a couple of minutes to bring my own story to the table of this conversation. So my burnout happened in 2019, and small blessings just before COVID. So it came with a story of its own. And I was a corporate consultant back then. So, embracing the hustle culture, but feeling profoundly, against it. It didn't feel right. It didn't sit right. Um, it was also a very, very intense personal period. I was in my third country in 4 years. Just recently lost my grandfather, breakup, lost my cat of 15 years, just the last drop in an already full glass. And I oftentimes say that it took me a heart attack to put my heart in the right place. And there were a few warning signs. The first one that I picked up on was that I lost all patience to read. And that was a big, big red flag for me. Then I love colors. The crazier, the better. But I started to wear gray and black. I just, stopped wearing my signature, very colorful statement, accessory, and jewelry. So I try to become invisible. And there are a few things that helped me. First was to unlearn everything that I was taught about resilience. I come from a culture, I come from a family, I was born into a generation where we were asked to over index on the grit and constantly undervalue grace. So I had to completely unlearn that. And I still struggle with grace to this day. I was taught, that one of the ways in which you're being kind and polite is to accept help without challenging it. So I had to learn the hard way to ask for the help that actually helped me, and not just help that was readily available and time tested and with an impressive track record. But also, the biggest unlearning was to look at what I was taught about work growing up and where I was in my life with what understanding and expectation from work in my life. So that was my journey, and I learned that when it comes to making professional life decisions, it's absolutely super helpful to know what you want, but it's equally helpful to know what you don't want. And boundaries are kind because they give clarity. So, Jennifer, you mentioned that you love the fact that we all wear glasses on this panel, and yes, I was thinking about how can I bake this into a question. So here's what I came up with. Having heard some of your experiences and based on your own professional experience, how have you come to look differently at your environment? And how have you come to look for early signs, look for warning signs? So who wants to talk about their glasses first?
I'll go. For me, I know using my team as an example, I always do check-ins on Mondays and Fridays, and to kind of level set with them. And my goal is anytime they have three or more tasks that are heavy load projects, I always gut check with them, like, okay, how are you feeling? How are you, doing with this? What barriers do you have? What can I take off of your plate? And getting them, at first they were just like, oh no, I'm fine, I'm fine. It's like, no, you're not. This is a lot. Like, let's break it down. Let's walk through how much time are you spending on this? And once they started to feel comfortable and trust in that I was asking these with genuineness, they started to be truly honest of, hey, I'm struggling here, or hey, I need support here. And so working together to realign or reshift and even push back on the business of like, hey, this deliverable won't get done, by this time frame because we have some other priorities, we'll have to deliver this, and getting them comfortable with those conversations as well, right? And getting them looped into it. And then also, touching base, I'm real big on boundaries. So I always tell them, you don't have to tell me your personal, but if there are personal things going on, it's okay to say, hey guys, I need a personal time, and no questions asked or what it is. That's not, that's not our priority here, but you need time to reflect, do what you need to do. and we as your team need to jump in and help you. And so they've gotten comfortable to be able to say that and do that without feeling like they have to overshare just to get something done, or overshare to, get the support that they were, needing. It's just more of, I need it. I don't need to go and dive into it, but here's where I need the support. Here's where I need your strength and struggles. So it's forced me to look at things differently and not gauge someone's abilities and or their success on how many things they've executed, but more so in the quality and how they went about executing it, has been more of how I changed how I view things.
I work with business leaders and HR leaders, and I make it a point to, like, when we see each other, I really ask like how they are. And most of the time, I'm very conscious about when they say like, I'm good, I'm okay. And then I really poke them a little bit more. What does okay mean? What does good mean? And then they start talking to me about little things. Sometimes they open up a little bit more. But like what you said, Evelyn, because sometimes like maybe they're not comfortable, they don't want to share something personal. But there were times I had this one incident where it was one of the HR directors. I because she was concerned about what's happening within the organization. I was helping them with their culture transformation. And then I just asked like, oh, how are you? Like, no, I'm good. I'm good. Oh, no, just tell me, how are you? So we went to the canteen, and then right there, she just basically had a meltdown, like, because she felt the pressure to deliver, and the organization was going through a massive transformation, and she didn't know where to find help when she's trying to give as much help as she could with the leaders, with the employees, with her team members, etc. So I think it goes a long way just to really make time for people when you sit down with them and really understand how they are. Because if you are just looking for an answer and good, and then straight away like, oh yeah, can you do this? Can you do this? Then you're missing the point of really asking people. You need to really check in, especially when you are working in an organization that is highly pressurized. Really take the time, look at their faces, look at the tone of the voice to really understand they are not okay. Because if they're not okay, then maybe all they need to know is reassurance, or maybe all they need to know is a reminder, hey, we still have resources here. You can reach out to these people. We have this community. You have this employee assistance program. You have this video, or maybe just send things to them so that they are reminded that they're not robots. They're human beings.
Yeah, I love everything you all said about supporting your team. And I definitely think those are things you can implement like quickly. I think for myself, it was more of how do I lead by example? And what you said was perfect about unlearning what you knew about work. Like, I grew up in a family that was very much work is work and home is home. And you don't share what's going on at work, and you don't, you can talk about work, but it's generalities. And so it's like compartmentalizing at its finest. And after my experience, I decided that it's integrated. Our world is integrated. We have way too much going on. And so there's no way you can completely compartmentalize. And so for me, that's a big part of what I do, is like keep myself in check from a courage perspective, to say, if I show up to a meeting and I had a really tough morning with my kids, like someone was vomiting or whatever the case is, God knows there's always something, like saying, hey guys, I'm sorry if I'm off for the first 5 minutes. Like, I had a heck of a morning, and so I'm here, I'm present. I will get there. But if I seem a little off in the first little bit, like, I'm okay. Just let me kind of get into work mode. I think that helps people also feel like they can be human in that. And it's not sharing, oh my gosh, my mom, and you're not unloading, feeling like people are unloading. It's just little things like, I got a flat tire on the way into work. And so, I got a lot going on. If my phone rings, it's not, something crazy. It's because I have a flat tire, whatever the case is. I think that's a big thing for me. And again, I think that's some of the unlearning of what we know, because it takes a lot for me to share that because of my, the way I was raised and things like that. And then I think the second thing that I really check myself on to make sure I'm leading by example is multitasking. I think this was one of the biggest things that led to burnout gradually, because you are constantly doing 100 things at once. And so I really try to help my teams and myself. And I'm very honest with it. I'm like, I still work on this every single day. Like I have to literally make myself not multitask because I'm not fully present in anything I'm doing, whether that's at home, whether that's at work. And that in itself, you never feel successful when you're, I bet nobody here has been checking an email and on a call and answering a text and felt successful at any single one of those things. And so, but if I'm doing it, everyone else is going to do it. If I'm the leader, others are going to think it's okay. And so really making sure that that's something that I try to do for myself. And then again, I think it helps my teams, my business partners, everybody, because I want myself and them to feel successful. And you got to stay where you are. So.
Based on everything that we shared so far today, and based on so many previous conversations, I think it's almost an understatement to say that life and work within the HR profession can get overwhelming at times. But I would love to bring into the conversation a dimension that I try to keep myself honest to always highlight. What about people who are an HR department of one? What is it from our conversation today that you want to either highlight or you want to bring new on the table, specifically thinking about HR function of one? Shall we go Renzi and Evelyn and then Jennifer? Renzi.
If you are an HR of one, please know that even if you're one person, you don't have to do everything. Have that open dialogue with the owner of the company. And then what support do you need? I think Evelyn said that earlier, like using AI, automating things. Because the reality is one person cannot do the job of a recruiter, a payroll, an accountant, an L&D, and all these other things. Because again, Jennifer pointed that out, we're not really good at multitasking. So have that open dialogue. And if that open dialogue did not lead to where you want, you still have a choice. Because if it's conflicting with your values, then you have a choice to go somewhere else. You have a choice to maybe move and then try something different. Because over time, if you just stay there for the fear of you're going to be losing your job, you don't have money to feed or food to bring to the table, over time, you're the ones who's going to be suffering. And the scenario will flip. It's your family who's going to be taking care of you because of you not taking care of yourself.
I echo everything Rincy is saying, and I would just also add, level set with your leader, the business owner typically, when they're in department of one, what are the true goals and what are the true objectives, and then timelining what that would truly look like, and then pushing back if those objectives and goals can't be met in a timeline, and identifying where that support will come from, because if you're only one, much to what Rincy and Jennifer stated before, you can only do but so much. And being clear on what support you will need, whether it's an additional person, better systems, better processes, whatever, to get what that support looks like so you're not burning out. And I echo what Rincy said, think you have to be selfish when it comes to self-care, and selfish in a good way, right? Meaning you have to think about yourself so that you can help others. And I always think about the airplane when they say, put your mask on first before you put someone else's on. And I always used to laugh at that because I know I'm going to put my babies on first. And it's just like, but how can I help them if I don't even help, So it's like, I understand the logic, but my knee jerk is always not to do it. But the older I got, the more I truly understood what that meant. And I think applying that to life and as a person of one, using that, help yourself so you can help others.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm currently an HR team of one, and so this is I'm writing it all down here. But on top of that, I think a tactical thing that I really try to do, because there's always going to be fires, right? When you go from a large company where you're putting out a lot of fires, but there's all this support and other people, it kind of catches the other stuff, right? Like someone can pitch in somewhere. When you are one, that's not the case. And so there are going to be fires every single day. That's how it works. And so what I try to do is I try to kind of categorize either days or chunks of time in my day. So I know on Mondays that we're going to be reviewing our OKRs as a leadership team. I'm going to have to give an update. So I spend my morning preparing for that. Maybe on Tuesday, we have two parts of our business. So Tuesdays are my days that I focus on, our marketplace side. Then Wednesdays are when I focus on my corporate side. And corporate means like looking at the trainings, whatever the OKRs there. So that has really helped me, because then I know, okay, this is when I know I have a dedicated day to get to it. I know I'll be able to provide my updates. I don't feel like I'm dropping the ball because this is my day or this is my chunk of time. And then it helps me, get ready for the week. So on Mondays, I spend my time putting those days together, and usually they're pretty consistent, but maybe sometimes you need to adjust because there's going to be fires or a new position you're recruiting for, or whatever the case is, or interviews, and it ebbs and flows. And so I think that's also the thing, is just understanding that if you don't get it all done today, it's going to be there tomorrow too. And that's okay. Over communicate, say, hey, I didn't get to it today. Own it. It's fine. Here's my plan to get it done. And that's kind of how I've kind of tried to combat that.
Mm.
And if I can add also, for an HR of one, it would be helpful to build your network as well. Like reach out if you have a local HR community or a country HR community, just reach out, because I'm sure there's also a lot of other HR professionals there who are alone in their business, and see if it's the same industry, see what they're doing. I think that's the best thing you can do for yourself. Like always get yourself up to date on what's happening in your industry, like similar industry or similar size organization, so that you can leverage on what they're doing and then apply that also in your organization.
Absolutely. That's been one of my biggest tips I tell every single person, is do that, because it's benefited me so much. I don't have all the answers, and you can Google all day, but you don't know what's true and what's not. And so being able to reach out to someone like you all and say like, hey, sometimes people will be like, what are you selling? I'm like, I'm not selling anything. I just saw that you speaking on this. I loved what you said on this podcast. I saw your article, would just love to connect in case there's ever something there. People are so generous. And so, yes, always do that. People will always give you their time.
Mm. There's one little thing that I learned from one of my previous line managers, and I do it irrespective of whether, I'm a team of one or part of a larger team. And she taught me to have a folder on my laptop called Smiles for When You Need Them. And whenever I get a positive feedback or a positive comment or, something healing and validating and supporting, I save it there. And when there are gloom and doom days, even if I only have 20 seconds, I just random open something in that folder. And it reminds me why I do what I do, and even why I do what I do in a certain way, because that is meaningful to other people. So a folder called Smiles for When You Need Them. And it can make a difference on some days. Now, I was reflecting back on the conversation yesterday, and the panelists mentioned that there are some usual suspects when it comes to organizational root causes and systematic root causes for burnout in organizations. Sometimes is the business model itself. Sometimes is just echo chambers of quite toxic leadership styles and leadership behaviors. Sometimes it's just pressure from layoffs and double hatting, triple hatting, multiple hatting. I would invite each of you, if you can look at one of the most common organizational root cause for burnout that you have seen within your environment, and how can HR address that in a meaningful way. It would be wonderful if maybe each of you can pick one, but let's just go with the flow on this one. Jennifer.
So I think this usually falls under HR kind of span of control, but look at what is being recognized by leaders, at any meeting. Look at the behaviors that are being recognized. If it's productivity, if it's results, and the same people are getting it over and over for what they produce, I guarantee you other people are burning out because they want to be successful. We all want to be successful. We all want to be recognized. And so if we think we're going to be recognized for producing, then we're going to run ourselves into the ground trying to produce. If you then can say, okay, let's flip it on its head. Let's recognize people that believe the best in each other, take time for themselves, really understand root cause, go out of the way to connect with somebody. Like those are the things that are then going to be focused on. What you put your focus on is what's going to be rewarded. And so I think if you aren't sure what's going on, take a look at that first, and see what and how is being recognized at your company.
If I can also add, I think for me at least one of the most common ones that I'm seeing in this part of the world is that misalignment when it comes to conflicting priorities. On one hand, you have the leaders obviously who want to improve bottom line, or efficiency, decrease costs, etc. And on the other hand, like employees are complaining that they're spreading themselves too thin and they're doing the work of 20 people when there's only 5 people. And they're expected to deliver the same output and expect like massive results. And as HR professionals, sometimes we get stuck right in the middle. How do you moderate this? How do you balance these two things where like you have the business and your manager telling you, the owner's telling you, we need to cut, we need more people because we need to deliver. So I think here, this is where the criticality of the role as HR and as a coach actually comes in. Because when you have that leader who just wants bottom line, and as HR, if what we do is just to take the message and then execute, then we're also not fulfilling our jobs. As HR, it's our responsibility also to challenge managers and leaders if what they're doing is purely on bottom line, because we all know there's already science and studies backed up by, if you don't focus on people who are the ones delivering the results for you, you're not going to see any result, no matter how many robots you put there, because at the end of the day, you still need people. So as HR, we need to have that backbone to coach managers, challenge managers, and maybe show them a different option. Because there's not only just one way to reach that increase in bottom line. There's so many ways, and cutting people and then neglecting people is definitely not one of the ways to do that.
And I think that involves having succession plans, and a good pipeline. Because if leaders don't think, hey, I have other options of how to get this done or helping people, if you feel burnout, you don't think you have a backup plan, you have no other resources, you're just going to continue burning out. So I completely agree with that.
Evelyn.
I would echo what both of them is saying. And I think just to add, I think a lot of times is that it's lack of transparency and clarity on what the true objectives and goals are, because then you have that misalignment to what Ritzy is saying, because everyone's working on their own objectives, their own goals, and they're not really meeting what the true business objectives and business goals are. And so when you have that, therefore, people, to their own, positive intent, they mean well, but necessarily may not be executing well because they're not clear on what necessarily is needed. And so I would add systemically being very clear, very transparent on what that is, so then they can be creative and objective in how they execute those things. To Rincey's point, because there's multiple ways, right? Just because one person thinks it's this way, we can come up with a better plan to do it. And I think also gut checking what your culture truly is. And I tell people all the time, I really, hate using the word we're family, because we're not really a family. We are business, right? And because my family wouldn't do some of the things that businesses do, right? So let's be very clear about that. We are a business, but we are humans, and we can, treat people kindly through this process and through this experience. And so I think I would say in systems, we do owe it to ourselves and as HR professionals to gut check what our true culture is, right? I worked at an organization, one of the biggest employers in the world. And when you're in it, the culture is chaos, but when you're in it, does not feel like chaos because everyone else is doing it. So you feel part of the norm. But when I got out of it, much to Jennifer's earlier point, it took me 6 months to realize I was in complete chaos and that I had to unravel every single thing I learned in that culture because it was so ingrained that this was not normal. And so I think, you know, as HR professionals and when you do reach out to others, you get to see that, wait, maybe I should question this in my org because we're doing those things and that don't seem normal for everyone. You know, when you start to talk to others, you'll start to realize that normal is subjective when you start to look at bigger and bolder scopes. Being in an org now where we're multinational, where US customs aren't always the right things, right? Going into Canada, I learned a whole new side of things, like, and it's like, wow, I really like this. Like, well, now it's like I have a new way of thinking when I approach things from my US centered mind, right? Because that's where I'm from and where I've been all this time. But going into another country and learning their laws and their customs and norms that are norm for them, and being able to take those and implement them or even suggest them have been, you know, life changing in ways, because it's changed how we view things, where we've done things so much this way, where, hey, have we ever thought we can do it this way? And, you know, actually we have to do it this way over here. So we're already aligning from a global standpoint, right? And so bringing those things to fruition has been changing for me and helping to break down some of those systemic things that create burnout.
It's very, very frustrating to say that we are about 7 minutes away from wrapping this conversation up. I feel like we could go on for at least 7 more hours, not just 7 more minutes. But my next question is inspired by some thinking recently. So I was away for 3 days facilitating a leadership team event, and between Basel and Frankfurt there's about a little bit over 2.5 hours of amazing train ride, and that's usually my just stare out the window and let your mind wander time. And what really surprised me was how often and how increasingly more often I've been getting the following reactions. I asked someone that I worked with quite recently. I asked them, we were talking about work, and I asked them, when was the last time that you just stared out the window? And I had to repeat that question for them to actually understand what I was asking. Or for example, when I start working with a team, one of my questions is, okay, what do you feel you miss most? And almost without exception, one of the answers is time to think. So in most of my workshops, there are some design thinking exercises that do start with individual reflection. And again, almost without exception, everybody says that the time was too long and they just started doing, you know, something else. So, you know, you ask for time to think, and when you have it, it feels uncomfortable. I would really love to ask you in the last minute, what is a routine or a ritual or a practice that you have that keeps you grounded and centered and mindful and intentional with your journey? Evelyn, I see you unmuted, so please.
I love this question because for me, I've implemented, I do not take meetings before 9 or after 4. And the reason being is that that's my time to start my day and set up my day. And then my time to also decompress my day and prepare for the next day. And if I do take those meetings, it has to be completely mission business critical. And I decide what that really is. And so it really gives me flexibility in moving forward. And I think that's helped me from my mindfulness standpoint and not feel overwhelmed going into the day.
Thank you.
Mine is my morning time. Yes, I am a morning person. I have always been a morning person. However, being a morning person and getting up and scrolling on my phone was usually the norm. I'd get up, I'd scroll my phone, I'd look at stuff, you know, and the next thing I know, I feel as drained as I did the next time. So Again, I have to be intentional about it, but I try really hard to get up and not look at my phone for the first hour I'm up. And I know that sounds small and that's not really business related, but for me, that one recharges me and it gets, whether it's like, writing down my to-do list, doing a brain dump, sitting and staring at a wall, whatever you need to do, you feel like, chugging some water. It just helps me give me some of my time back before I pour into everybody else, whether it's my kids running down the stairs or my fiance or, someone pinging me really early in the morning. Like I don't look at it. I don't even have my phone. So it's great. It's really my me time. So I think that's one thing that I have implemented for myself to make sure that I fill my cup before pouring into everybody else all day.
For me, I like movement, whether it's just a stroll in the park or exercise in the morning. Just like Jennifer, I'm a morning person, so I usually do my exercise like 7 in the morning. For me, that gives me energy. That gives me that happy hormone in my body, at least that would last me through the day. So I would encourage everyone. We're sharing all these like tips to you guys that actually has worked for us. Like find what will work for you, whether it's yoga, meditation, reading, just finding that time where you can actually have a sense of what you're feeling, what you're thinking, what's going on in your head. That feeling that by you having time for yourself, you're actually recharging your battery. Because I'm sure a lot of us have gone to holidays and still, you came back and you still feel depleted because maybe you're doing things, for work when you're on holiday. But really, when we talk about like finding time for yourself, like really disconnecting and finding time for yourself where you feel recharged when you come back to work.
Mm.
And if you haven't read The Miracle Morning, it changed my mornings. It's the best book ever, and I love it. So big plug there.
Evelyn, I see you unmuted. You want to say something?
I just want to read something that was in the comments before we leave, because I think it really resonates to this whole conversation of burnout. And I apologize if I do not say the name correctly. Corne Swart, excuse me. And they give excuse me, burnout, and then they list what it should be. Balance is a key to a healthy work-life harmony. You understanding your limits can foster personal growth, recharging regularly to maintain energy and enthusiasm, nurturing relationships both inside and outside of work, optimizing tasks to work smarter, not harder, utilizing resources and support to enhance well-being, and then thriving in your role by embracing challenges as opportunities. So redefining what burnout should be. I thought that was really good to kind of wrap this and bring this to a close and make sure everyone amplified that message out to everyone.
Thank you so very much. I was actually saving that comment. So it's great minds think alike. The only thing that I would love to leave in this conversation before we close is after working with quite a few teams, I advocate for reflection, intentional, mindful reflection. And for many of the teams that I work with, I put together a puzzle, and there are 4 questions and 1 in the middle. And the 4 questions are: what surprised me most? And we usually agree on a time span, like a week or a month. So what surprised me most? How have I looked for new? What did I have to let go? What gave me discomfort over this past whatever time frame we are looking at? And how have I balanced reflection with action for myself, my team, and others? And I was so happy to see more and more teams keeping that as a standing point on their team meeting agendas, and it sparked some quite meaningful conversations and team rituals. So thank you very much, Jennifer, Evelyn, Renzi. As usual, a joy, a privilege. This whole conversation felt like a gift, like a pre-weekend gift. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you, Jessa and Enrique, for creating this space. And I hope I will get to see as many of you on the other side of the weekend as possible. Until then, take care and keep safe and stay mindful and intentional. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.